I love this movie. I know it's 10 years old, but I watched it for the first time a week ago and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It truly is an underappreciated film. It normally takes about 20 minutes into a movie for me to really get interested in it, but Triangle had me intrigued from the very beginning. It really keeps you wondering just what the heck is going on, and you're probably still confused about some parts after the movie is over. At least I was left confused. So I watched it a couple of more times to really understand what's happening. I enjoyed this movie so much that I decided to create this video to discuss it and explain exactly what happened in the movie to help those who are still confused. Before you watch this video, you really should watch the movie at least once, because I am going to spoil the entire story. Also, I will be discussing things that won't make sense unless you watch the movie all the way through. To better understand where this movie draws inspiration from, we should first briefly talk about just who Sisyphus is and how his story ties into the story of Jess. Sisyphus is a Greek legend about a man who cheated death twice. The first time was when Death was sent to bring Sisyphus to the underworld, but Sisyphus tricked Death and managed to chain him up, preventing people from dying. Eventually, Death was freed by another god and Sisyphus died. However, while Death was incapacitated, Sisyphus told his wife to not give him a proper burial. Now in the underworld, Sisyphus asks Death if he can return to Earth to confront his wife for not burying him. Death agrees on the condition Sisyphus returns to the underworld after doing so. Sisyphus, of course, never had any intention of returning. Eventually Hermes, known as Mercury in Roman mythology, was sent to bring Sisyphus to the underworld. Once in the underworld, he was punished by having to push a boulder up a hill for all eternity. Sound familiar? Now let's go through the movie and I'll explain what happens and how everything ties together. Before we begin, I want to clarify that there are only 3 Jesses in this entire movie. I've seen a few theories that suggest there are an infinite number of Jesses, referring to the same Jess as Jess 1, Jess 2, Jess 3, and so on. This isn't true. There is real Jess, the Jess in the sundress at the beginning of the movie. She was in a car accident that killed her and her son, Tommy. There is Spirit Jess. She is the one we follow through the story and is the spirit of real Jess. And finally, there is Other Jess. I will explain who she is when we first meet her in the movie. 3 Jesses, 3 sides to a triangle. I am going to start my explanation when Spirit Jess wakes up on the yacht. The reason being, this is when Spirit Jess's loop begins, because when she wakes up, she has forgotten all about her experience on the ship and the car crash. We know this because she has a dream where she's remembering herself waking up on the beach after being pushed into the ocean. But when she wakes up, she says,
We're gonna sleep for a couple of hours.
It's a terrible dream.
What about?
I don't remember.
This explains Spirit Jess's deja vu, but why she can't remember anything specific. Her memory has been wiped. As far as Spirit Jess is concerned, she dropped Tommy off at school, boarded the yacht, and fell asleep. Spirit Jess never knowingly lies while on the ship, except when she tells Sally and Downey that Greg told them to meet him in the theater. Here's a fun little bit of foreshadowing.
So things okay with Tommy?
The same. Every day's the same. Tommy likes things to be a certain way. If I do one thing differently, I lose him.
The storm hits. Heather dies. Everyone else is stranded on the capsized yacht. When the group sees the ship, Downey says he can see someone. This is Other Jess. More on her later. Also note, we are seeing the left side of the ship here. The group now boarding the ship is Group 1. Spirit Jess is part of Group 1.
Oh, Greg, what time you got?
About 11:30.
The clock on the ship and Jess's watch show the exact same time, 8:17. Greg says his watch shows it's 11:30. This indicates the ship is linked to Jess. This also shows Jess died at 8:17 on her way to the harbor, which fits with the time she was supposed to meet Greg. At the beginning of the movie, she looks at a note saying to meet him at 8:30. This means Jess died at 8:17. They set sail at 8:30, and they were in the ocean for 3 hours until they found the ship.
I don't know.
This is where Spirit Jess sees someone in the mirror.
Maybe someone wants to think that it is, but it's not. So let's just go to the bridge, we'll find the skipper, and then we'll go home.
This is other Jess. She has been following the group. The keychain Victor found earlier in the hall was dropped by other Jess. At this point, Victor chases after other Jess, and we see him a bit later.
That's not it.
What is it? What is it? Is it Tommy? Is it guilt? Is that what it is? Do you feel guilty?
This is an interesting line because it implies Greg also doesn't believe Jess's story that Tommy is at school, or it could be him remembering what Jess said back on the ship.
What's the matter? I've never seen you like this before.
I don't know. I just feel guilty when I'm not with Tommy.
This could explain why Greg is frustrated with Jess, because he believes Jess's guilt of not being with Tommy is making her see things and thinking she has been on the ship before. Greg and Jess enter room 237 because they hear running water. 237 is also the house number Jess lives at. This is another clue that the ship is all about Jess. This is a nice visual when Jess enters room 237. Jess's image is reflected in 3 mirrors, representing the fact that there are currently 3 Jesses on the ship. And here are the 3 current Jesses on the ship, from left to right, who has been on the ship the least amount of time to the most amount of time. This is an important scene because we know why Greg goes to the theater and how Jess in the future knows where to send Sally and Downey so she can ambush them.
Babe, come on, we're supposed to meet him in the theater.
Jess returns to the restaurant looking for Downey and Sally, but her future self has already told them to go to the theater. Jess notices the food has already turned rotten. I'm really not sure why this happens or if there is any reason for it happening. Maybe the director just thought it would be a nice detail. Note that this Victor received his head injury from other Jess, stumbles into the restaurant, and attacks Spirit Jess. Spirit Jess kills Victor in self-defense. Shortly afterward, we hear a gunshot and Jess runs to the theater. Spirit Jess arrives in the theater and we see Greg has been shot by future Spirit Jess. Sally blames Spirit Jess because Greg told them Jess shot him before he died.
You shot him! What? He said you shot him!
Downey asks why she told them to meet in the theater, but as we find out later, it was future Spirit Jess who told them.
I did it. My God, you're a fucking schizo!
Sally, no!
This is future Spirit Jess. Downey dies, then Sally dies. At this point, everyone from Group 1 except Spirit Jess is dead. There are now only 3 people on the ship. Even though we have been introduced to all 3 different Jesses by now in the story, we don't yet know that other Jess and future Spirit Jess are different people. It's implied they are the same person, so we think there are only 2 people on the ship. Jess hears someone running on the deck above her. She thinks it's the person chasing her, but as we can see, it is not. This is when we realize there are 3 people on the ship. The person running above her is other Jess. Here we can see the person in the mask is wearing a pink watch band. The same pink watch band we can see Jess wearing in the restaurant. This shows that the person in the mask is Jess's future self. Notice future Spirit Jess is hesitating to shoot until she hears present Spirit Jess say,
I have a son. I have a son.
Present Spirit Jess gets away, finds an axe, and throws a metal object to distract her attacker as she runs in the opposite direction. Notice future Spirit Jess does not get the jump on present Spirit Jess here. When present Spirit Jess disarms future Spirit Jess, look to where she kicks the metal club to.
Who are you? Tell me! Who are you? What do? You have to kill them. What the fuck are you saying? It's the only way to get home. What? You have to kill them. Kill them! Kill them! Kill them!
As the masked person falls overboard, we can see she is wearing Jess's sandals, another clue that the masked person is Jess in the future. This is an important scene. This record represents the timeline. It's playing the song Anchors Away, but it's skipping, so Jess restarts it. By doing so, Jess restarted the timeline, which created Group 2 and reset things on the ship. This is why there is always fresh food, why there is always a knife in the kitchen for Jess to take, and why there is always an axe for Jess to take, and plenty of paper on the notepad, always enough jumpsuits, and why the armory always has plenty of shotguns. This is Group 2, which Other Jess is a part of. Spirit Jess is never Other Jess because Other Jess was created when Spirit Jess restarted the record. While these are 2 distinct different groups of people, they are still the same people, and therefore their actions mirror one another's almost completely. The only thing that changes the course of events is Spirit Jess now knows what's going to happen. Note how when Group 2 arrives, they are seeing Spirit Jess on the right side of the ship. When Group 1 arrived, they saw Other Jess on the left side of the ship. Again, this shows these 2 groups are mirror images of one another. The record is skipping in the same spot as before, except now Jess's reality is skipping with it. Another visual to illustrate there are now 2 different Jesses. Let's recap what has happened so far. Present Spirit Jess killed Victor in self-defense. She was chased by future Spirit Jess, but got the upper hand and pushed her into the ocean, which continues the loop. Present Spirit Jess becomes future Spirit Jess later. Other Jess was following Group 1 around and was chased off by Victor and gave him the head injury. Other Jess's whereabouts when Spirit Jesses are fighting are unknown, but we can assume she is watching as present Spirit Jess pushes future Spirit Jess off the ship. When she sees the new capsized yacht arrived, she now understands how the time loop works and has now decided to kill everyone in order to save them. She goes about cleaning up the ship by dragging Victor's body out of the restaurant and dumping him overboard. She then goes to the theater and does the same for the bodies of Greg, Sally, and Downey. Future Spirit Jess murdered Greg, Downey, and Sally. She was pushed into the ocean by present Spirit Jess. These are now the 3 Jesses on the ship, again, from left to right, who has been on the ship the least amount of time to the most amount of time. Past Other Jess just arrived with Group 2. Present Spirit Jess is the Jess we have been following along with the story. The other Jess Group 1 saw when they first arrived is now future other Jess and is determined to kill Group 2 because she believes it will save them. Spirit Jess is now following Group 2 the same way other Jess did when Group 1 first arrived, including accidentally dropping her keys and spying on them in the restaurant.
I saw someone.
We now see how Victor receives his head wound. Other Jess wounds Victor from Group 1, and Spirit Jess wounds Victor from Group 2.
Soon you're gonna be dead, Victor.
Easy on the grabbing.
Everything that happened to you before.
God, I can't even believe I'm talking this shit.
Victor, it means you're gonna die. You'll die, and then Downey, and then Sally, and then Greg.
This is Jess's moral dilemma phase. She hears her future self's words echoing in her head, telling her to kill everyone. But Jess doesn't yet know about the loop and decides to save everyone from her other self, giving her reflection some not nice words before doing so.
Fuck you.
Here is another interesting part of that scene. On the hanger is the word quick clean. Quick means Mercury in Dutch. Remember in the beginning of the video, I mentioned how Mercury eventually brought Sisyphus to the underworld?
What?
Babe, come on, we're supposed to meet him in the theater.
Sally and Downey were once again told to meet Greg in a theater, but Spirit Jess was in the armory during this time. This shows that it's other Jess who tells Group 2's Sally and Downey to meet in the theater. Spirit Jess sees the scene between past other Jess and Victor unfolding the same way it did between herself and Victor. She prevents past other Jess from killing Victor in self-defense. This has made her believe she is in control of the situation and is changing the pattern. Spirit Jess tells Victor she is going to save everyone when she hears the gunshot from the theater. Upon entering the theater, Sally once again blames Spirit Jess for shooting Greg.
You fucking...
Meaning future other Jess shot Greg in much the same manner as Spirit Jess does later. Spirit Jess saves Downey and Sally and wounds future other Jess, furthering her belief that she can change the course of events. Spirit Jess leaves Downey and Sally with the shotgun while she returns to the restaurant to get Victor. However, future other Jess has already dragged Victor's body to the side of the ship and threw him overboard. We know this because future other Jess says,
Where's Victor?
He's dead. He fell over the side.
Future other Jess leads Downey and Sally to room 237, where she proceeds to stab them both.
So, what are we doing in here?
Sally manages to crawl away and finds a radio room. She sends out a distress call, which is the distress call the group hears back on the triangle.
Please, can you hear me? Help me. Please help me. She's killing everyone. They're dead. They're all dead. Please help me.
And now, quite possibly the best scene in the entire movie, Spirit Jess catches up with Sally on the top of the ship and finds dozens of corpses of Sally. At this point, Spirit Jess has a realization that she hasn't changed anything at all. Here, Spirit Jess watches as past other Jess bludgeons future other Jess to death, then throws her overboard.
Listen, you gotta hold on. I think it'll return again. The yacht, the triangle, I think it'll come back. If it does, we'll escape on it, me and you together.
Jess doesn't yet understand why her future self told her to kill everyone. She seems to think the yacht just turns up randomly. This explains why her first instinct was to try and save everyone. It's not until Sally dies that it clicks.
returns when you're dead.
Other Jess on the lower deck is the other Jess Group 1 saw when they first arrived. This means when Spirit Jess arrived with Group 1, past Other Jess had just pushed future Other Jess off the ship. Now Other Jess is going to follow Group 1 around, just like Spirit Jess followed Group 2 around. Note that Spirit Jess doesn't understand that she is caught in a loop. Rather, she believes events are repeating, and she has convinced herself that things start repeating once everyone is dead. It's a good assumption. She pushes her future self off the ship, then another group arrived. She doesn't know she created Group 2 by restarting the record. What's really happening is she pushed her future self off the ship earlier. Her future self went home, got in the car accident, boarded the yacht, then 3 hours later arrived at the ship again. It's just a coincidence Group 1 arrived again after Sally died. To Jess, there is no loop. Things are repeating over and over again, which is why she believes she can change events and free herself. But she has never changed the course of events in any significant way. She has always boarded the ship. She has always pushed her future self overboard. She has always attempted to save the group from Other Jess. She has always ended up killing everyone. She has always been pushed into the ocean by her past self. Nothing has ever changed. Let's recap again. Past Other Jess kills future Other Jess and dumps her body overboard. Present Spirit Jess gave Victor the head wound, prevented past Other Jess from killing Victor, then tried to save Downey and Sally but failed. Future Other Jess told Sally and Downey to meet in the theater, shot Greg, pushed Victor overboard, then stabbed Sally and Downey. These are now the 3 Jesses on the ship. From this point forward, the story plays out exactly like when Spirit Jess arrived on the ship, except we are now seeing it from the point of view of future Spirit Jess instead of past Spirit Jess. We now get to hear what Other Jess says to Victor before injuring him. It's similar to what Spirit Jess says, but slightly different.
What? No, I mean, he was dead. He's not dead now. I was hiding in the furnace and I saw this version of myself, and she had blood on one side of her face, and then I killed her. I killed her on the front of the ship.
Listen, I'm gonna do you a favor, okay? I'm not gonna tell anyone about this.
It's the truth. You gotta listen.
No, I'm not listening to another word you say.
It means you're gonna die. You'll die, and then Greg, and then Downey.
This is when Spirit Jess realizes she has to kill everyone in order to save them.
Don't be scared, Victor. I can save you. I know how to save you.
She doesn't kill Victor because she knows past Spirit Jess is going to kill him in the restaurant. Present Spirit Jess goes about cleaning up the ship so the newly arrived Group 1 won't suspect anything. She starts in room 237, where Group 2's Downey tried to warn everyone by cleaning up the "Go to Theater" message in the mirror and writing JES, where he apparently died before being able to write the last S in Jess's name. Jess writes "Go to Theater" in Downey's blood on the mirror, continuing the loop. She then drags Downey's corpse off the ship. Then she goes to the theater and does the same with Greg's body. She then tells Downey and Sally to meet in the theater so she can ambush them. Jess heads to the armory to grab a shotgun, realizes she doesn't want people to see her face, and puts on a mask. She heads back to the theater, kills Greg, kills Downey, then kills Sally. She then misses when firing at past Spirit Jess and begins to hunt her down. This is a scene when current Spirit Jess was being chased. She hid behind a counter in the kitchen while future Spirit Jess stood in the doorway. Look at how this scene plays out when current Spirit Jess is chasing past Spirit Jess. Past Spirit Jess is already gone by the time current Spirit Jess gets to the kitchen. This shows things are changing slightly, but not enough to change the overall outcome. It explains why current Spirit Jess can't completely rely on her previous experience and confront past Spirit Jess in the kitchen and kill her there. Jess's past experiences are correct sometimes because she knows where to wait for her past self. Again, notice how this scene plays out slightly differently. Here is when current Spirit Jess was being attacked.
Don't shoot. Please. Please don't shoot. Please. I have a son. I have a son.
Future Spirit Jess also hesitated, but as soon as current Spirit Jess mentioned her son, she went to fire, prompting current Spirit Jess to push the gun away at the same time. Now, let's look at the same scene when current Spirit Jess is the one with the gun.
Please. Don't kill me. I have a son. I have a son.
Current Spirit Jess hesitated much longer, even after past Spirit Jess mentioned her son, giving past Spirit Jess a chance to push the gun away before she can even fire it. This is further proof that current Spirit Jess thinks she's in control. Here, current Jess hears the metal object distraction and knows her past self is running in the opposite direction, giving her a chance to get the jump on her past self this time. Again, Jess has changed the loop, but she can't change the outcome because she's in a causal loop paradox. This means she can't kill herself. If she kills her past self, then her past self never pushes her future self off the ship. Her future self never gets into the car accident and never boards the yacht, meaning her past self never arrived on the ship. Jess is doomed to repeat these actions forever. Jess gets pushed off the ship and finds her way home, where she sees her son Tommy through the kitchen window. Spirit Jess then hears real Jess say this. This means real Jess was going to drop Tommy off at school that day because that's the thing he's going to be late for. Spirit Jess then watches real Jess be verbally and physically abusive towards Tommy. Spirit Jess doesn't have a look of anger on her face, she has a look of guilt, meaning this is how she really treated her son that day and she's feeling guilty seeing herself do it. This is also why Jess kept saying she felt guilty about Tommy, not for leaving him at school, but for abusing him.
Yeah, I'll just clean up the fucking mess. What's the matter with you? Huh? What's the matter with you? Just one day off is all I ask. Just one fucking day off.
Also notice the clock in the kitchen says 7:15, meaning we are now in the real world and Jess is seeing how she treated Tommy that morning. The timeline fits because she was supposed to meet Greg at the harbor at 8:30 and she died in the car accident at 8:17. Spirit Jess kills real Jess and Tommy witnesses the killing, prompting Spirit Jess to console him by telling him it was just a dream.
Tommy? Sweetheart, come here.
The beginning of the movie is kind of confusing on this point. It shows Jess in a sundress the entire time until she's ready to leave, which is when she is wearing shorts and a top. People tend to think this means it's the same Jess who changed out of her sundress because of the stain. What's really happening is the dream scene is shown out of order. It is shown first, so people tend to think it happened first in the beginning of the movie, but later at the end of the movie. But as we can see in this clip from the beginning of the movie, Jess is wearing her white top during the dream talk scene. Meaning this happened exactly how it plays out at the end of the movie. Real Jess was abusive towards Tommy. Spirit Jess killed Real Jess and stuffed her in the suitcase. Then Spirit Jess and Tommy leave. We know Real Jess is stuffed in the suitcase at the beginning of the movie as well by comparing the two scenes. Here is the scene at the end of the movie. And here is the same scene at the beginning. It's almost the exact same scene, except at the beginning, we don't see Jess take the necklace. This also explains how Jess keeps getting more necklaces to drop on the ship. Now we know why Jess looks apprehensive at the beginning of the movie when she saw the note about meeting Greg, and why she seems to be in a hurry to leave. She wants to warn Greg to not go sailing. Jess looks worried as she looks at the marching band because they are playing Anchors Away, the same song the record was playing on the ship. As Jess looks down at the pile of dead seagulls, she realizes she's still stuck in her loop. Nothing has changed at all. Jess is in a car accident and Tommy dies. Real Jess is already dead. Spirit Jess doesn't die because she was never alive. Another clue that Jess can't escape her fate. Look at this drum at the scene of the car crash. Now look at this drum in the restaurant of the ship. This part with the taxi driver, who is deaf, happened when the real Jess was in the car accident originally, which is when Spirit Jess was created.
No point trying to save the boy. There's nothing anyone can do that's gonna bring him back.
This is Death telling Jess she should move on and accept her death because Tommy can't be saved. But Jess figured she has a way to cheat Death. She can get back on the yacht, armed with her knowledge of what's going to happen, and change events to save Tommy.
Can I give you a ride?
Yes. Take me to the harbor.
Hey. I'll leave the meter running. You will come back, won't you?
Yes, I promise.
This is exactly why Sisyphus was punished. Jess made a promise to return, but broke her promise.
Jess.
Do you know me?
Jess is surprised that Victor knows her name, thinking maybe he remembers her from the ship. But it turns out he just recognized her description from Greg. And now we know why Jess was so apologetic to Greg in the beginning of the movie. She knows what's going to happen, but is going to put everyone through hell again anyways. Jess is now going to board the yacht, fall asleep, and wake up with no memory of what happened. She will reach the ship just as Group 2 Sally dies, once again becoming past Spirit Jess, forever punished by having to watch her son and friends die over and over again for all eternity. Here are some final thoughts. It makes sense that when real Jess first died and she had no knowledge of the ship, that she was not yet ready to accept Tommy's death and wanted to go anywhere but the afterlife, which is why she still ended up at the harbor. What doesn't make sense is why when she originally ended up on the ship for the very first time, there were already two Jesses on the ship. This means Jess was always on the ship. There was never a time she wasn't in the loop. And that's the full explanation of what happened in this movie. There are so many interesting details and questions that I didn't cover in this video because I didn't want this video to be an hour. I might make another video exploring those questions.